Peace and prosperity, people. What is peace? What is prosperity? This philosophy is so precise in its definitions. I talk about this quite often. It's one of my favorite aspects of a philosophy that is 5,000 plus years old, that has been handed down, not with a tradition of come up with something new. You must say something novel, like philosophy in the West. But it's, can you understand the principles, the eternal principles that have been handed down by the sages for ages? In fact, some of the oldest Upanishads that they themselves are 3, 4, 5,000 years old. We don't really know. Indians are notoriously terrible at keeping the dates of things because they see things not as a linear point in time, but just cyclical, happening over and over and over again. And the sages that attain the highest knowledge within something like the Vedas, Vedanta meaning the end of the Vedas, they transcend all knowledge. So then they're just talking about the same thing over and over again of how to transcend knowledge, how to transcend this experience that would have a linear timeline. So notoriously bad at dating things. But we know that through parchment analysis that some of these Upanishads go back thousands and thousands of years. And some of the oldest Upanishads say things like, as the sages have said since time immemorial. Like even in the oldest scriptures, they're pointing to sages that have said that in the ancient times compared to their ancient times compared to us. It would be like someone 5,000 years ago talking about the ancients from 5,000 years before now told us this. And then we read it 5,000 years later and we think it's ancient, but to them it was like, dude, we're just the latest generation coming across the timeless truths from thousands of years ago. So that's how old this wisdom tradition is that gets handed down generation after generation. Usually it's precept to a student. It's the teacher to the student. 1-to-1 is the typical teaching method. So it's very, very intimate in the way that it's handed down to make sure that that student really, if you got one student, you're going to make sure that they really understand what you're saying if you're teaching them for 20 years. And within that beautiful lineage, you have extreme precision, refinement and precision of words. So peace and prosperity. This philosophy, I touched on it recently. This philosophy says that what we're really seeking deep down is peace and prosperity. Not one or the other. It's not peace, but then to struggle to make ends meet and can't pay your bills because that'll affect you might have peace for 30 days, but then you have mental agitation. And if you have prosperity, but then you don't have peace, you got $1 billion, but you're worried about the feds coming and arresting you, that is going to destroy any value that prosperity would bring you. Peace and prosperity. And why do we want those things? Because that is the stillness. If you have both of those, it's the stillness upon which you can meditate. It's the stillness upon which you can nididhyasana, the classical version of meditation, not just kind of sit quietly or focus on your breath, but nididhyasana, that's the classical version of meditation, is that if you have peace and prosperity, you have no more desires. Without desires, you're able to sit with a single-pointed concentration, single-pointed thought to the exclusion of all other thoughts. And that is the last step before moksha, nirvana, turiya, liberation, enlightenment. So what are we seeking in our mumukshutva? The interim mumukshutva, the spiritual pursuit, even in the spiritual pursuit, is peace and prosperity. So, in that great articulation and sequencing of we want peace and prosperity because peace and prosperity will give us the stillness to achieve what we really want, which is freedom. These are all words at this point. Many of us do not know what those words mean. We use freedom like we use the word love, but maybe we don't love anybody but ourselves. We say freedom, but we don't really know what freedom entails. And this philosophy just openly says these are just words. And these are only words. These are pointers. The real goal is not to understand the words. The goal is to experience what they're pointing at. And that ultimate goal is freedom. Working backwards from that, peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity. It's not the 10 million bucks that could let you live off of interest alone. It's not the love of your parents that will hopefully give you internal peace. And then maybe you got marital troubles, and then you're like, oh wait, no, hold on, I also want the love and acceptance of the spouse. And then you have kids that grow up and don't respect you, and you're like, okay, and them too. So you have peace and prosperity, not the interim symbolic versions of that. It's not $1 billion. You could have $1 billion and not even on the peace front. It's not the feds coming at your door, but you have $1 billion and you're like, man, what would it be like to have 10? I've got a handful of friends in Silicon Valley that sold their companies for $100 million. They're building their next thing, hoping to sell it for $1 billion. Friends that have companies that sold for $1 billion. Waking up months later, can't get out of bed for 4 days. This is my friend Justin Kahn, who talks about this openly. He talked about this recently in a live podcast episode I did with him in Venice, where he said he thought that was going to bring him a sense of completeness. 4 months later, he couldn't get out of bed for 4 straight days. And the next thought was, maybe I need to build a $100 billion company. So is prosperity in selling a company for $1 billion? Apparently, for that person, it wasn't. Peace and prosperity, what are they? Well, peace is, does your understanding supersede your conflict? I mentioned this before, but repetition is power. Peace is, does your understanding supersede your conflict? It's not courage, because understanding supersedes courage. Does it take courage to get a shot that would help you if you got bit by a rabid dog? No, it's your understanding is like, yeah, give me more pain. It doesn't matter, even if it's a really painful shot, because things will get really, really wheels off and really bad if we don't do that. It's not courage, it's understanding. Is it courage to jump in a cold plunge? I mentioned that a few episodes ago. Love cold plunging. It's not courage at all. It's just an understanding of, man, in 15 minutes, I'm going to feel amazing for 4 hours. Understanding superseding our conflict. It's not an absence of conflict. Conflict on one level is harmony on another level. As Alan Watts famously said, conflict on one level is harmony on another. You want that conflict between the white blood cells and the pathogen in your blood right now. That conflict is harmony on the higher level. That work, that friction, that slightly ever increasing challenge, that is flow state within the work that you do, the hobby that you have. That ever increasing challenge, that friction, that is flow state. Flow state is defined as optimal satisfaction internally and optimal performance externally. You're doing it the best you've ever done it. Writing that novel or painting that picture, shooting hoops in the backyard. When you are in flow, it's optimal satisfaction and your optimal performance. This is so philosophically aligned. It's also associated with a diminished sense of self. You're not thinking about yourself. It also feels like time is slowing down. You're so in the present, you're not thinking about past and future. You're dialed in and you're having an optimal performance. Great, perfect. But what you care about even more is this optimal sense of satisfaction. Like, dude, I feel so good right now. But you don't ruin it with too much sense of self and self-reflection. You just keep writing that book. And that flow state, scientifically shown to require challenge. If it's too easy, you don't get into flow. So the absence of conflict, that isn't peace. That isn't satisfaction. It is, does your understanding supersede the conflict to where you're like, dude, I'm going into this. I'm going to keep the peace in our community by training to be really strong to handle any adversary that comes our way. Does your understanding supersede the conflict that is inevitable. You can't scrub the world clean of conflict. But you can achieve understanding that supersedes any conflict you might see. That's the principle of sacrifice comes in. Prosperity. What is the definition of prosperity? Prosperity is do your means supersede your desires. It's not 10 million bucks. It's not $1 billion. It's simply do your means supersede your desires. And you get to prosperity if you can grow your means past your desires, or if you can invest in diminishing your desires. I'll say that again. You can grow to prosperity by growing your means past your desires, or by diminishing your desires. This philosophy says it's far easier to diminish the desires than to get hooked on more and more desires to where they're always outpacing your means, even if they temporarily supersede your desires. Keep your desires in check. By all means, grow your means, but keep your desires in check to be below your means. And that is prosperity. It couldn't be defined any other way. Peace. Grow your understanding. And then you can take on more and more conflict. Maybe your peace, your satisfaction, your best moment of the day is on the other side of a 15-minute really hard workout that seems like conflict. And then a 30-minute, and then a 45-minute, then a 60-minute really hard workout. And you're like, yeah, it's my favorite moment of the day. It's how I feel right after a great workout, or maybe in the middle of one. And it looks like conflict to prior you, who wouldn't believe it if someone told them, no, actually like going really hard in a workout, gym or a cycle session or a run, going really hard is going to produce a peace that you haven't felt in a long time. Prior you might have never believed it, and then you find yourself jumping in 44-degree water and you do it so willfully because your understanding supersedes your conflict. So what are the things that you can control? You can't necessarily control all of the conflict that you will see in life. It could grow, ebb and flow. You can't necessarily control the means that you might have. It will grow, it will ebb and flow, but you can control your understanding, your pursuit of knowledge, and you can control your desires and the diminishment thereof. Grow our knowledge, keep our desires in check. This philosophy actually says the way to eradicate our desires is through knowledge. The way to eradicate our desires is through knowledge. More knowledge teaches the drug addict, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. More knowledge teaches the person addicted to cigarettes, yeah, I got to figure out a way to quit. The knowledge they might need more than just knowledge, but the impetus to quit comes from, ooh, yeah, this is might not just kill me, but this could be the beginning of lung cancer for my children, for my spouse. That's knowledge. That's understanding. And it gives them the courage to fight the demon of addiction because of that knowledge. Growing our knowledge actually diminishes our desires. So, working backwards from that. Freedom is the ultimate goal. Peace and prosperity lead us to freedom, that ability to find, experience freedom. Peace is a function of understanding over conflict. Prosperity is a function of means over our desires. Keep working backwards. Knowledge diminishes desires. And what does this philosophy say? Knowledge is the path to freedom. Knowledge is the path to freedom. You thought this episode was going to be on peace and prosperity, and maybe it's on so much more than that. Freedom and how to get there. According to this philosophy, at least. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.